welcome everyone to this special Lugnut TV podcast here on the day after Veterans Day. We are going to have some special interviews here this evening, but first, we're going to kick it off with some driver interviews from Sunday night that we were unfortunately not able to see live on Max Speed TV with the Bruzy Raceware USA Cup Series. We'll get those top three drivers, some interviews, see what they had to say about that race at Pocono. What an extraordinary race it was comparatively to Saturday at Iowa and Thursday at Pocono itself in the truck series. So a big night and day difference there. We also have some interviews up with some of our veterans. Now, uh, I wasn't able to get a hold of every veteran, get them an interview, but everyone that I tried to that responded to the Facebook post, it was there. I got it done the best I could with those guys, and I was gonna have a special interview out here with my wife, but she either fake sick or was sick. She was sick. On Veterans Day. So thank God she had that day off. But, some quick shout outs here. We'll be hearing from John Pansula, Jeff Merck, and Ronald Klein. But I got a few other guys out here. I know I talked with Josh Medlock, our Saturday broadcaster with MaxSpeed TV, and about his service in the United States Navy. I had seen John Henderson served in the United States Navy as an aviations operator. Uh, a guy that we'll probably talk to a lot on Sunday will be Chris Shaw. You hear me mention that he is a chief of the United States Navy. He's an operations specialist. 16 years active duty still. He's currently, actually, at the time of this recording, down here in Mississippi doing his job with the Seabees. Tim Bradburn out there, fire detection chief in the Army, I guess would be it's not a mortar unit, just an artillery unit. And a guy that used to race with us a lot that actually still has a lot of all-time wins inside of Loose Lugnuts Racing, James Lehman, an Army active duty. I know he just went to Georgia and dropped a ton of money on his actual race car with his father, so we hope to see him back in the future. If I miss anyone, I'm sorry about that, but I did put the post out there. I did try to do a little bit of due diligence and get some, uh, you know, look inside people's profiles on Facebook that were inside the league. So if I missed you, I'm sorry, but happy Veterans Day to all those guys. Thank you for your service. Again, like I said, I was hoping to get that interview with my wife, but she was sick. But she's a big part of what we do in my household here. Everything goes about her service, and we're 10 years in. Chief Petty Officer Wood, thank you for your service. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into some driver interviews here, and then we'll cut back and forth between that and when we talk to our veterans. So listen up. All right, we got Daniel Smallwood here for a special Lugnut TV interview because we did not get this race aired. However, I want to make sure to congrats the top three. But here's our winner tonight of Pocono and the Abruzzi Raceware USA Cup Series here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. Mr. Smallwood, it's about time after so many second places.
Man, I tell you, we've had so many second places, third places. I'm losing my voice. I'm celebrating so much. I didn't think I had a car to win tonight, but Justin and Michael definitely had the car. But with them people staying out, we brought it home somehow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the 87, probably the long dominant car, but with the way, some drivers stayed out, some drivers didn't. Wave rounds where that caution fell, obviously a key factor in this entire race. Because, like I said, 87 was above and beyond some other drivers here in the long run tonight. However, it counts because those things happen. Those are part of the race, and you capitalized and capitalized quickly, while the 87 had to go another lap before he could get around.
Oh yeah, if he would have got around earlier, I think he would have had me. Um, I would, I could kind of keep him with me, but he kept catching me because of the draft. In turn three, I backed it in to turn three. I backed it up. He dove it in. I knew once I saw him dive it in, he started sliding up. I knew it was all mine.
All right, Mr. Smallwood, go ahead and thank those that you can for this race win.
I gotta thank my parents. I know they were at least watching you. I know you were updating them in the chat. Um, Over the Top Motorsports, this league, you're a great broadcaster, great commentator. Um, Everything. We got to win over Justin. I think we should be in the points lead now. It's gonna be big. We're gonna go for the championship here.
Yep, those points are crucial. Second, tons of seconds, which are great for points, no matter which way you look at it. But now you get the pivotal point for the chase. Obviously, if you make it, but the bonus point for the chase when you get to that section.
Oh yeah, we're gonna give them everything we've got in the chase. We're gonna try to bring it home.
All right, Mr. Smallwood, congrats again. We'll see you next week at Charlotte. All right, third here on the Lugnut TV special interview with this race here at Pocono. Justin Michael, the man out front most of the race, best long car, probably best car of the night. Just circumstance had you pinned an extra lap or so, but second place still points. You're right there in the points battle. Second place, not bad, not a win, but not bad.
No, not bad at all. Really didn't want to see that last caution because we were way out in front, and so even after pit stops, hopefully we'd stayed out there. But and then that very last caution, kind of screwed us over because we had a good lane going into the green and everything. But it is what it is. We'll take seconds. Good points tonight.
Yeah, no, not you. You mentioned that first caution. I know people are like, "Oh, what caution?" There was a caution straight out of pitting for the last pit stop there, around 45, 47, and then we go back to green, and it was almost obvious that the caution was going to breed a caution because everyone was trying their best at that point. And despite what the admins did tonight, this was still a hell of a race, Justin, from the drivers' best race all week.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely a great race. Not many wrecks. Everybody was racing pretty clean. Up front we had a really good battle going on, and Daniel put on a good show there at the end, and we just couldn't catch him. So that arrow push was pretty bad there when you're running right behind somebody.
All right, well, second place, like we said, not too bad. Go ahead and thank those people that you need to thank.
Oh yeah, just everybody out there watching. Everybody in here for putting on a good race. You for calling the race, John for painting me a great car, and for putting on a good league.
All right, Justin. Well, we'll see you next week at Charlotte.
Thanks.
All right, moving again to our third place finisher on this Lugnut TV special interview here. We'll get with Jeff Merck, who had to battle through some adversity inside the top 10. That's not bad saying that. I mean, up and down through the top 10, but had to work your way hard for that third place finish.
Yeah, I've been looking for a podium finish all this season. I wanted to get one for the big boss man. I like to call him John Hendrick, since he brought me over here to Over the Top Motorsports. I'm happy I could finally get a good finish for him. Had a lot of good runs. This is the first good finish. That last caution wouldn't come out. I don't know. I might have, because I had a short pit strategy, and I think I had 11 to go. Mitchell was within 6 seconds, and Justin Michael and them hadn't even pitted yet. So I would probably been at least that far, if not further, with 10 to go. So I don't know. They'd had to run me down on newer tires. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird caution. Let's put it that way. I know people weren't viewing it. I'm not gonna say it because I'm not even sure what the caution was. So we'll move on from that. The even weirder caution, well, maybe not even weirder, was the caution right as we get back to the green flag inside the 50-54 range. Did that upset your line? Did you, like Justin Michael said, he had a preferable line on the restart versus his second restart there?
Yeah, Pocono is very line oriented, especially going into one. If you go in too shallow, it gets super tight in the middle off. So Yeah, definitely. If you're down on the bottom and you can't clear somebody to kind of swing out to do your entry, it messes with you pretty good.
All right, well, Mr. Merck, I know you thanked the big boss man already, but third place finish here tonight gonna boost you up on some points, get that confidence running. Go ahead and thank those people that you need to.
Yeah, I'd like to thank John Hendrick, all my teammates over here at Over the Top Motorsports. The guys always do a good job of helping each other out throughout the race. Pit strategy is good to have a good strong team behind you. ASN, um, RaceGear.com, Abruzzi Motorsports, Pit Pass, Support the Troops, um, all of our sponsors, all of our admins, broadcasters. Without all that, none of this would be possible. So I'd like to thank all those guys, and we did it, Big Boss Man. Put her on the podium.
All right, 60 of Jeff Merck. They're running a great scheme, if I don't say so myself. We'll see you next week at Charlotte.
We'll see you.
All right, guys, back from those driver interviews right there on Sunday from Pocono. Uh, I just wanted to make sure those guys got out there, got their, congrats for what a spectacular race that was. That was just the top three. Look for those results on iRacing to figure out where you are. Dan, Elisa, Paige probably coming out sometime today, being Tuesday. So we'll get into our veteran interviews next. If you were listening to that interviews there, that was a impromptu interviews, and I had my kid in the background. She was over there playing some video game, clicking away. I'm sure everyone heard that. But we'll get into those veteran interviews real quick, and then we'll close out our show. So, preemptively before we end here, thank you for taking the time to view this evening, and we'll see everyone next time. Uh, Probably after Charlotte, sometime I would say, maybe a week after Charlotte. We'll see y'all then. All right, here with this Lugnut TV special interview with the one and only Ronald Klein 76 machine on the field here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. But as we've seen, we're talking to service people here, people that have served in the United States military or Canadian military at this point. We thank all people who serve. But Ron, we got you here. It's usually we talk about racing with you or the admin, boring stuff. But today, again, thank you for your service.
Well, I thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and we had some time to collect some information. You served, I think you said from '98 to '02, United States Air Force as an F-16 avionics guidance and control specialist. So, if you can talk a little bit what you did in the service.
So yeah, I went into the Air Force in January of '98, and went to basic training, graduated basic training, went on forward to my technical school, and you kind of get to pick your jobs, if you're smart about things. And so I thought guidance and control sounded really cool. Didn't really, I mean, I read about it, but it didn't really say a whole lot. And I didn't know if I was going to be working on missiles or what I was going to be working on. So went through and got into tech school. And in high school, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to algebra and everything else, and barely skated by. Just
So you
because
actually use it in real life. That's what you're saying?
well, no, not exactly, but so when I got to school, you had to go through basic electronics, and basic electronics in itself is not just, okay, here's a circuit board and we're going to do this with it. You have to learn, you know, the math behind it and figure out, what you need on the circuit board. If it, a parallel circuit versus, uh, a non-parallel circuit, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get deep into that, but anyway, so I was scared, man. I mean, I wouldn't say for the first time, but I mean, I was legitimately scared. Like, I needed to buckle down and really pay attention. And got through that, and then went on to the secondary school, which was the actual guidance control part of it, and got through that fairly easily. And then went on to my first duty station, and did my 4 years, and I'll just kind of pause there and let you go ahead and ask more questions because I think you're going to lead into some other
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, so if people aren't yet realizing after we've talked to all these people, there's you join the military, you go through your boot, and I think more Air Force, Navy personnel go through specialty technical schools based on the available jobs than maybe the Corps or the Army does. But they obviously go through their own specialty things. But we get to that point, and I mean the base work is base work. I've seen you do your job, you prepare, and you prepare all the time until you're asked to do it, and then you do it to the best of your ability. Uh, However, I know we talked about this a little bit the other night, Ron. You were in the service for an interesting time period in United States history. We I've talked to many service people over the years that were in 2001 of September. We all know that 9/11, but it's an interesting time because I'm sure people around the naval yard that I'm used to hearing from, it was man up, guns at the ready. The Marine Corps was standing guard at the gates. That type of atmosphere. Tell us what you had to go through on that day.
On that particular day, I just happened to have the TV on before going to work, and the images started coming across the TV, and I didn't I didn't. It was hard to process that it was actual reality. I, I think my mouth was probably wide open, and I'm standing there in my uniform, ready to go to work, and like I can't leave the TV, but I can't not leave. I've got to go to work, and you're like, what do we, what do I do? What is going on? And my phone rings, and of course, people are calling and saying, hey, this is what's going on, so on and so forth, and just get here when you can. So I left the house shortly thereafter, and I did not live very far from the base. I probably lived half a mile or so, and the security was so tight that the line to get into the base was basically past where I lived. So I actually had to go down, turn around, and get in line. Took me a considerable amount of time to get on base, and I mean they had everything out there. They had the mirrors, they had dogs, they had everything. I mean everybody was getting checked. You had to get out of your car. They checked the interior. You had to pop the hood. You had to pump the trunk. The security was at the highest I have ever seen, and I mean for obvious reasons. I mean this is the biggest thing in my lifetime, anyways, that I can recall being part of, anyways. So it was definitely an interesting time. And then, you finally get to work, and there's really, and I hate to say this, but there's not really a lot of work going on because we're trying to figure out what's going on and what we're going to be doing. And then, it's not immediate. It's okay, what's going on? Are we going to have to go? And of course, we did. The unit that I was part of, I can't say what it did, but we got tasked, and we went, and we did our deal, and eventually it was time for me to get out of the military. And I'll stop there and let you ask more questions if you want to, but there's
Yeah, yeah.
an interesting next part of that too.
That's a thing. I mean, you got called to war immediately, and everyone should remember. At least I hope you remember. Ron's in the service. I think we went over this and laughed about it. I'm in the 6th grade watching these images come across. I didn't do anything in school that day. We watched uh, everything happen, and I say thankfully, but that's a good thing. Thankfully, I actually remember the cost of it. My buddy's dad was gone 3 months later. I wouldn't say 3, but 6 months later on the ground in Afghanistan. So uh, I know what happened afterwards to some point. However, Ron, you said you did your service, and there is still classified information about it. I'm glad you're not sharing that. However, you know, you went from service to civilian life. That's the next step, the next evolution. It happens to you if you do 4 years, or it happens if you do 35 years. There's that evolution. Tell us about the evolution of going from active duty to veteran status.
So the interesting part about being in the military when something like that happens is the military can say, we don't care that it was a 4-year commitment. We are putting you under what's called stop loss. Stop loss is a program that they can implement, and it doesn't matter if your time's up. You can't just walk away. They consider it to be, they usually put that in critical manned jobs. So one of the job that I was doing, the unit that I was in, we were considered critically manned. So I actually did 4.5 years instead of 4 years. They extended, and then finally they lifted the stop loss, and I separated, honorable discharge, and then I kind of didn't want to do anything with the military and whatnot, and kind of stepped away from that and went to work. I went to work out at a place who were making some really cool machines. They were 1/4 scale mini monster trucks.
That sounds
So
cool. But uh, you, I know it's kind of funny. You laugh at like the job opportunity there, where you ended up from one step to the next. But your technical school, your time in the military, what has it taught you to into the civilian world, as we call it?
I think the biggest thing that you'll get from the military, that a lot of people do, and not everybody does, but your work ethic and your integrity and honesty. And they have a service before self and all that, so it really puts your mindset into I don't want to be cheesy, but be all that you can be. That used to be a slogan, for one of the military services. And it's kind of the same way in the civilian world. If you do that, you can be successful. So moving from the military to a civilian job, they told me that when I got hired, it was between me and one other person, and they selected me because I had been in the military, and they figured that I would be a very reliable employee.
Well, you hear it there, folks. There is some benefit to the military. Sometimes those military jobs don't transfer over too well, unfortunately. But you gain a lot of real life opportunities. Uh, you know, you think the uniform's a big deal, and you get out in the civilian world, you're all relaxed, but you miss that uniform. You miss the consistency of it. Uh, so, but Ron, we'll go ahead and end it here with you. We thanks for the little bit of insight to your service. Again, thank you for that service.
I appreciate that. And whenever this is released, whether it's before, during, or after, I want to say, you know, thank you to all the service members out there who have served, and thank you for all the patriotic people out there that help support the military. We greatly appreciate it, whether we've served or not. I think just being a patriot of the country and supporting the military really goes a long way. So thank you.
All right, we'll cut it off there with Ron and get on to the next interview. All right, again here with the Lugnut TV podcast, we continue thanking our service members, and we have John Pansula, or John Crazy Mike Pansula, however you want to call him, the 01 here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. Typically, you can see him Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday nights on our broadcast. But John, we got you up here for the interview. First off, thank you for your service.
You're quite welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to serve my country proudly.
All right. Well, John, like we just went over in our notes real quick, served Army active, you said 12 years plus 2, getting you up to about 14. You said you served as a paratrooper from 79 to 91. before we go into your craziness about which divisions and armor classes you served under, I asked people what it was like to serve during 9/11, and my dad growing up had to deal with the same thing of the Cold War. Let's talk about that. What is the mentality like, at least for you, growing up during the Cold War and serving during that time frame?
Well, initially, I had my real father served in Vietnam, and I've had many family members that have served, whether it be Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine. So when I was little growing up, it's always something I knew I wanted to do.
All right. It had to been a different mentality too, like I said, just, thinking about the Cold War and, uh, we get that nuclear arms race going with Russia. Did you ever feel the pressure? Maybe did you serve on the Eastern Front of your Europe at one point?
When I initially went in, I did go over and I served in Germany. That was on my first real hitch out of basic and AIT. I initially went into armor, which was an armor crewman on a main battle tank, our heavy main battle tank, the M60A1, and then moved into the M60A3s. The reason why I'm telling you that is because I patrolled the border, the East and West German border, um, and spent about 2 years over there on my first hitch patrolling the border and the Czechoslovakian border as well. We were on a quick reaction force. And it was strange because, you had the borders there, you had the Berlin Wall. The borders are fenced, there's mines, and it was active. Everything was active. They had towers where soldiers were on the other side, and we'd throw things back and forth and shout at each other and do crazy things. But that mentality was a pretty crazy mentality at that point in time because we really didn't know what to expect. We just knew that we were in a hostile environment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't worry about the nuclear atmosphere being inside of a tank. They say they're rated for it for somewhat other than a direct hit, and you're just worried about the Russians on the other side and what their maneuvering status is. Yeah, crazy stuff there in Europe. But you went on to say that you know, some historic you, tanks you served with. You know, the heavy tank outside of the Vietnam War. Uh, what was it? The M60A1.
Yeah, 10-4. It was the M60A1, which was a lower grade firing system that we had, but initially it had the infrared and the M105 Delta telescope um, for optics, and then we moved over into the M60A3, which had a lot of more advanced technology with the wind mass, gives you wind direction, speed, temperature, things like that, and we started getting into the tank thermosights, which you're firing off a hot or a black cold or a black thermal image. Anything that was hot was either black and the background was white, or anything, if you switched over, you could switch over to anything hot was white, and then with the black background, that makes sense. And then we also still had the 105 Delta telescope, which was a degraded mode of shooting things in the event that the main optics had been either blown out or shot out.
That's some major advancements at the time too. You're talking about because we haven't even gotten to the end of the '80s, where they start developing what we'll call the battle tank of the future, and that would be the M1A1, I believe, or maybe even just the M1, whatever you called it then, the Abrams, and that technology that you get into right there, the scoping that was necessary, and it's a different battlefield that the Abrams was intended for and what it was used with, but Eastern European and that flat country sometimes, and the rolling hills. Uh, you needed those long range telescopic sights for tanks and whatnot. It, did you ever get a chance to, if you can, compare, contrast the tank of yesteryear and that brand new tank outside of Desert Storm?
Yeah, initially, as you were saying, the Abrams actually started as the XM1. It was kind of a draft per se of the main battle tank. As time went on, it went on to the M1A1 Abram. Now the M60 was equipped with a 105 millimeter smoothbore cannon, and it was rifled like a rifle that you shoot off your shoulder. However, the M1A1 went to a smoothbore cannon, and it was 120 millimeter. And going back to the M60, that fired a APDS, which is an armor-piercing discarding sabot round, and heat, which was high explosive anti-tank, and HEP, which is a Willie Pete or a white phosphorus round. And going into the M1A1, we actually had a fin-stabilized armor-piercing discarding sabot, which once the bullet came out of the cannon, it peeled its skin and it had fins that were actually guiding a long pinpointed piece of you know, tungsten steel carbide penetrator that was just it'll travel a straight line up to 8 miles before it loses any deflection or elevation.
Yeah, real tank piercer around there, and people are going like, John, that's so technical stuff. You served the last time in '91. How do you remember all this? This is what the military trains you for. This is what you prepared for your whole life. Thank God we didn't get into that shooting match with Russia, or obviously the missile match with Russia. But everyone on that line was prepared to do just that, cross over into East Germany of the time, into Czechoslovakia, into uh, you know, the pact area with Russia and the rest of the countries there. So it was a heavy, heavy time, and I'm glad you know your stuff even today, John, because it just means a whole lot. And those service people out there going, shaking their head, going, yes, I know what he's talking about. It's just one of those things that you always keep with you. What would you have to say to someone that's contemplating joining the service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps? What would you have to say to them? Obviously, I encourage people to make a calm, collected decision about it, but at the same time, it outside of the war factor, it does offer some great opportunities.
Yeah, the military offers a great variety of opportunities in all fields in education. Even after you get out, you can get an education while you're in there as well, as far as college credits and things like that. But what I would say to anybody that's joining the military prior to signing the dotted line would be to really think about what you want to do, what you want to focus on. Maybe try to think about whether or not you can use it in the civilian world once you are released from service, something that you can fall back on and utilize in your civilian life. Uh, things of that nature. It gives you a good opportunity to save some money and travel all over the world and learn different experiences and different cultures of life. I mean, I've been all over the world. Europe wasn't the only place that I've been. I've been to everywhere you could possibly imagine: Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iraq, Afghanistan, Panama. But I switched out of armor and actually went into the airborne corps. Normally, it's the other way around. You walk a long time and then you want to ride. Well, I rode a long time and then I decided to fall out of airplanes for a living.
Now that's a great, interesting story. And if you see John here in the chat, because most drivers just enjoy listening to the content we have. Uh, Tell him thanks and engage him in conversation. Obviously, you're knowledgeable, John, but we're coming up on some time here, getting ready for the race here tonight. But again, I will say it. Thank you for your service, Mr. Pansula.
Well, I really do appreciate it. I volunteered and wanted to serve my country proud, and I appreciate everything you guys do, and really appreciate you having me. I don't get to talk much on here, and when I do, sometimes it's the wrong thing during the race. But other than that, I really appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.
All right, folks, that's the 01 John Pansula here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. We'll be on to our next interview. All right, here for another Lugnut TV interview with one of our veterans, Mr. Jeff Burke and the 60 machine here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. Now I've taken down a little bit of notes prior to this. Jeff Burke, machinist mate, 3rd class, United States Navy. Tell us about the length of service there.
Actually, I have 2 stints in the military. I actually joined the Army Reserves right out of high school. I did that for 4 years, took a little break. Then I joined the active duty Navy. Joined in 1998. Actually, believe it or not, the ship that I was on, I had just got removed off of that ship when the World Trade Center got hit, and they actually took that carrier and moved it into the mouth of the New York City harbor, and it sat there with 2 Tomcats on the Alert 5 waiting to, or at least that's what I've been told by friends that were still on the ship. I don't know if it's a fact or not.
Well, what ship was it?
It was the USS George Washington. It was an aircraft carrier, CVN 73.
Yep, I've seen it a ton. Being stationed in Norfolk, my wife that is. But like you said, I mean, double service there. That's crazy. I mean, you signed up for reserve service, and then you got there towards the that middle part and joined the Navy, and that's a weird time to be in the Navy too, or in any military branch, so to say. We talked with Ronald Klein about how uptight and weird and the emotions of 9/11 in the service, at least. We all know where we were on that September day, whatever the song title goes. Do you remember where you were standing?
Actually, I was separated at that point, but I still had contact with some of the guys on the ship. I was actually driving a concrete truck, and I could still tell you exactly where I was sitting when the boss came downstairs and said they just blew up the towers, went upstairs where the little TV was, and the first tower was smoking. They hadn't even hit the second tower yet. Um, that was a rough day.
Yeah, rough day for all Americans, and I at least try to teach my children about that day and what it meant to the world events. Obviously, we look at Pearl Harbor and events in between, but Pearl Harbor and 9/11 are those American days that really changed our outlook on the world. But let's talk about your service. I mean, you can embellish on the Army Reserve if you did anything in there, but you're a machinist mate, 3rd class. Tell people what you did as a machinist mate.
Well, basically, they call us machinist mates. It's a little misleading. Actually, the patch on our arm looks like the screws. We call them screws, but it's like a big prop. So basically, we work in the engine rooms. They call us snipes because we never get to see the light of the day. We're always in the bellies of the ship, making the screws turn, making steam for the catapults to launch the aircraft. Um, a thankless job.
Yeah, it could be if no one ever sees you, they can't find you to thank you. Um, Aircraft carriers are a beast on its own. 5 to 6,000 souls intertwined doing the job to get the aircraft launch and project American power at sea. So, I let off every other uh, interview here saying thank you for your service, but I haven't told you thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for your support. And most people don't know this about aircraft carriers, but anytime they're deployed, um, like in an active scene, like in the Persian Gulf or the Med or something like that, when they're doing workups, they're normally by themselves. But when they actually deploy on a mission, um, it's one ship out of a 13 ship battle group. We have 2 fast attack subs.
I was about to say, don't mention the little guys down below.
The little subs, they're pretty badass. They're our underwater support. We got a bunch of support above the water as well. Basically, the whole group is there to protect the carrier because it's basically the heart of the operation. All the other guys are there for support to protect it. And all those guys' jobs just as important as the carriers because without them, the carriers couldn't do their job.
Yeah, and that's great. And you had 2 stints, like you said. What is your most memorable, or do you have like a we went to Lisbon or uh, gosh, I'm gonna mess up this Italian city, Tarantino, Toronto, or something like that.
Actually, my most memorable is we went down to Fort Lauderdale for Fleet Week. Um,
Fleet Week.
so yeah,
Yeah,
we went
Fort
down to
Lauderdale
Fleet
with the
Week.
beaches. That's what Jeff Merck
Yeah,
remembers.
well, believe it or not, I never really left. I never deployed overseas. We went to Nova Scotia, Canada one time, the island up there off the coast of Canada. We went up there, stayed up there for Fleet Week, and we left down there. We were doing workups, and then about a month before we did our 6 month med cruise, I actually got separated out on a medical. So I'm retired on a medical through the Navy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so goes. I mean, I talked to one of the guys in one of our many chats that had the medical thing happen too. So it just that's the way the ball rolls sometimes with military service. But you know, I've pondered the question from driver to driver. Uh, what would you tell someone that's wanting to enter the service or on the line, be it the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, even the baby Navy, the Coast Guard?
Yeah, I mean it's always a great thing. Teaches you self-discipline, teaches you self-respect, teaches you pride in your country, pride in your flag, pride in all the men and women that has done it before you, whether they're here, gone. You know, because every time we do a special paint scheme, I run my POW MIA paint. Um, I'm always thinking of the guys that we left behind, or uh, we're still getting them back from North Korea. Uh, so always keep them guys and their families in your prayers, and remember what they done for you, even though they don't even know who you are. They went over. They paid the ultimate sacrifice. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people have pride in the flag, what it stands for. Even if you don't believe what the flag stands for, at least to have the respect for the men and women who died for it, or missing for it, or was tortured over it. Um, Guys put a lot of men and women have put a lot into that flag, and it should be respected, whether you agree with it or not.
Well said, well said. Despite our political differences, discord in the country at the moment, it's always good to remember that, if you're, disenchanted with that flag and not understanding what it's meant for, it's good to ponder what it means for the other person who made that ultimate sacrifice. And, I'm taking my kid on Monday. I'm actually surprised that their school is not, off, but I'm taking my kid over to a memorial, a Vietnam Memorial, the local one we have down here south. Um, what would you recommend for, someone out there that's listening that wants to go to a memorial? What's the standard you would set for those people, or what you would say to teach about each individual circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're going to a memorandum, or even if you go to your local military, uh, every state, most people don't know this, has a federal burial ground for military. Um, just go by, pay your respects, take your hat off, say a thank you. We don't want a lot of hoopla about, hey, you served, yada, yada, yada. We don't expect you to bow down and kiss our feet. If you see a veteran wearing his hat, walk up, stick your hand out, say thank you for your service, and that's all you have to do. Uh, that puts more pride in the veteran's heart than anything. Just about every time they'll stick their hand out, thank you for your service. They'll say thank you for your support. They'll smile and they'll go on their way, but they won't ever tell you how much it means to them when somebody does that. I mean, that's what we do it for. We do it for the nation. We do it for the country we love. Um, really, uh, whether I agree with you or not, I think you have the right to say it or do it up to a certain extent. Don't disrespect something, like I said earlier, that a lot of men and women have fought and died for to keep upright where it needs to be. You know, you know what I mean. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but just every time you see a veteran with his hat, walk up, shake his hand, say thank you for your service. Let him know you appreciate what he gave up so that everybody can be free.
Can't say it better myself, Mr. Merck. Well, we're going to go ahead and end this interview here. Again, thank you for your service, Jeff Merck. We hope that we continue this round of racing coming up into Charlotte. See a ton of paints out there. Like Mr. Merck said, he'll be running his POWMIA. It's always good to recognize that half or third of, veteran status of those guys missing out there in the world. We'll catch you on the next interview.
All right, Mr. Wood, thanks for all you do. You always do a great job, and look forward to it coming out on Facebook.